We all remember the absolute chaos of the 2008 financial crisis, but what if the fix was actually worse than the disease? Today, we're going to dig into this idea that the cure for the last big crash is the very thing making our economy today so fragile.
This quote right here is the key to the whole thing. The argument isn't that nothing was done back then. Oh no, a lot was done. But the solution, well, it didn't really fix the deep underlying problems. It kind of just papered over them, creating a totally new, much sneakier set of risks. So how on earth did that happen? Think of it like this. All the screaming headlines from 2008, they're long gone. But the fundamental issues, they never really went away. They're like a ghost in the machine, creating this hidden weakness in our economy that is a direct echo of that crash from over a decade ago.
And to really understand this ghost, we have to go back and look at the cure. See, when the entire global economy was teetering on the edge of a cliff, central banks all over the world whipped out some incredibly powerful medicine. But, like any strong medicine, this cure came with some really serious long-term side effects.
Okay, so the main ingredient in this medicine was a pretty radical policy called ZIRP. That's zero interest rate policy. The idea itself is actually pretty simple. If you make it practically free to borrow money, you're hoping to kick off this huge wave of spending and investment, to jumpstart an engine that is completely stalled out.
The logic seems solid, right? The crisis hits, boom, central banks slash interest rates down to nothing. All of a sudden, borrowing is basically free. This unleashes a torrent, a flood of new money into the global financial system. But this is where our story takes a really interesting turn, because the huge question is, where did all that money actually go?
And here we have the first major side effect. All that easy money was supposed to go into the real economy, building new factories, creating more jobs, raising wages. But instead, a giant chunk of it took a little detour. It went chasing quick returns, and in the process created what people now call the everything bubble.
I mean, just look at the scale of this. A 400% increase in the stock market. Now, this wasn't because the economy suddenly got 400% more productive. No way. This was the result of a tsunami of cheap cash chasing a limited number of assets, pushing their prices up to just astronomical levels. And we're not just talking about stocks here. This wave of cheap money literally lifted all boats. It inflated the value of pretty much every kind of asset you can think of, from houses to brand new things like crypto and even collectibles like fine art and luxury watches. It was a gold rush, but it was a gold rush fueled entirely by debt.
So, this brings us to the second massive side effect. While all the people who owned these assets were getting richer and richer from the everything bubble, a very different story was playing out for pretty much everyone else. And this created a huge disconnect, a tale of two economies.
On one side, you had the financial economy, and on paper, it looked amazing. Record highs in the market, soaring asset prices, you name it. But on the other side, the real economy, where most people live, was telling a totally different story. Wages weren't really going anywhere, the cost of living was going up, and it was a tough road for a lot of regular folks. The boom on Wall Street just wasn't making its way to Main Street.
And it all comes down to this one simple, powerful idea. A booming stock market can easily hide some really deep problems in the system. When all that wealth piles up in financial assets, instead of getting invested in real-world things like productivity and wages, you end up with a system that looks healthy from a distance, but is actually incredibly fragile underneath.
Okay, so let's just connect all the dots here. We had a historic crisis, which led to a radical cure, all this easy money. And that cure, in turn, created two really dangerous side effects, this everything bubble and a massive gap between Wall Street and Main Street. So, where does that leave us today?
And here's the trap. After more than a decade of the zero interest rate world, the system got hooked. It got addicted. Every single time central banks even whispered about raising interest rates back to normal, the markets would freak out, threatening to pop the whole bubble. The economy became dependent on the very medicine that was making it sick.
And this brings us right back to that core idea we started with. The global economy isn't truly healthy, it's fragile. It's being constantly propped up by intervention. It's on life support. That ghost of 2008, it's not a ghost of the past, it's the machine that's keeping the whole thing afloat right now.
Which leaves us with a pretty critical and honestly unsettling question. The tools we used to fight the last fire have actually made the whole building more flammable. So, what happens when the next fire starts? Is our system ready for it? That, right there, is the long shadow of the Great Recession.